technical difficulties. Apparently I was violating YouTube's copyright, so sorry. Don't know how I was doing that.
There. Fiona Donovan's in there.
Oh, hey Fiona. Oh God, sorry about the technical difficulties, guys. Okay, so hopefully I don't get booted off now. I'll give everyone a few minutes to come back. I'm looking at the chat. Hello?
So signed off to them.
Okay. Sorry, just making sure everyone can see and have the link, especially the people that organize this. Okay. Yeah, Jaffa says hi, Fiona. One second, I'm just going to make sure that I can see the chat, and then I'll get going if that's okay with everyone. Sorry about that. Okay, I can see everything now. Thanks for your patience, everyone. Okay, so I guess I'll just get started. So my name is SHAUNA BUCKLEY, and I just want to say thanks to everyone at Katie Lounge for asking me to be a part of their amazing talk series. Feel super honoured, especially after seeing the level and of work of the other people that were speaking. So feel out of place, but also thankful for being asked. So if anyone doesn't know me, I'm an Irish art director / designer, currently living in London, working at Kessel's Kramer, and under the name of Other Office with my partner, Simon Sweeney. I'll be talking about my work, but hopefully it has some insight into process that might be helpful or annoying, I don't know. Please jump into the chat at any point to say anything nice or maybe something bad or any questions if I'm talking too fast, talking too slow, or not making any sense at all. So I'll be watching. Now I'll just switch over to this. Okay, so hi, Katie Lounge. So starting my talk off with, sorry, one sec. Great. Now, starting my talk off, it made sense in my head to start off as like a timeline because I don't know, like when people do these talks, they feel like they want to make a point or something like that, but I'm not very well known, or I've never really had the opportunity to show my work in this kind of way before, so I thought I'd try do it in a process kind of way and go through it that way. This is just a screen recording of my current Tumblr, but basically in like 2011, 2012, I met my now partner, Simon Sweeney, and he was already studying design in college, and I basically took 2 years out straight after school and went straight into working in retail, so I didn't know what anything was, but I had a Tumblr like most teenagers or people in their early 20s back then, and Simon very kindly informed me that it was all graphic design, and I was gathering all of this kind of material and becoming unknowingly visually aware of what design is, but not knowing how someone would even make half of this stuff, or that was even a profession, or even the word design in this context. Like, I can't even remember the first time I heard the word design. It was probably Simon telling me about it. And then very luckily got into IDT in college and made really stupid things like this. But looking back on it now, it was actually like a cool kind of research project that was in like feminism and kind of juxtaposing images against each other. And a thing that we did in college was putting loads of references around our little space, and it was almost like a mini studio in the way it kind of operated, which was really nice and fun. And then the nice thing about IDT was that there was a lot of different kind of faculties, and there was the National Film School, which is where anyone that wants to do anything in film and television goes to kind of study that in college. So we were very lucky in the visual communications course. We're able to actually team up with like new directors from there. So I did this work for Jelly Baby for Naomi Fagan, a director, an Irish director, and it was kind of unknowingly the first time that I did art direction, or didn't realize what art direction was. And like a big part about my whole kind of journey is like not understanding what I'm doing most of the time, but finding out words later in life. Like, later in life I found out the word graphic design, and then even when I was doing graphic design, no one ever said the words art direction to me, and this was the first time I probably did it. And Simon very kindly drove me around in the car for 2 days, taking footage of kind of like suburban Dublin, to kind of capture these images, because one of the good things about IDT was that we always had to make our own images. Like, if it was part of a research project, you could do found imagery, but it was mainly encouraged to create your own, but didn't know what I was really making. And then really lucky that during that time people wanted to work with me and Simon, back then under the name of It's Okay. We work with our longtime partner John Leo, who created this Pilly Willy exhibition in 2016 about the rave ephemera from the queer underground Ireland, 1970 to 2000, with some new works in there as well, which actually formed the base of a lot of projects that we continue to work on with John today. And this fold out was a part of the physical exhibition, but we also created a microsite which acted as an online exhibition, and it's basically all the kind of archive of posters that John had collated across his different resources and people that were a part of that as well. And the posters reveal Site by It's Okay, RIP. So that was one of the first kind of, bigger things that a lot of people seen, which was kind of nice. Sorry, I can't see the chat. Figure that out in a minute. And then that's kind of an example of actually, we always had other stuff happening on the side, just like today, and it makes the name Other Office perfect for us, because it's the other kind of thing going on in our lives, regardless of everything else that is kind of happening. And then this was kind of a client that we had. It was very nice in college that we often had like clients come in. You know, obviously they're not real. They are real clients, but they're not like paying us any money, obviously. And this is the Royal Irish Academy of Music, and another example of doing art direction but not being aware of it. And here's an example, a lo-fi example of my amazing friend Kaylee, who let me chop her head off and, you know, make and, you know, kind of form the basis of this idea. So this was like the kind of, you know, first way to explain to my tutors what I was going to make, I guess. And then, as I said, we had a lot of different faculties in IDT. So there was photo studios that we had access to and stuff like that. So a girl in my class, Caroline, very kindly acted as my model. And when I look back on it now, it's like I was directing somebody, but you don't realize that you're doing that at the time, or at least no one tells you that's what you're doing. And then one of the largest research projects we took on in college was the ISTD. So you choose a topic, and then you have to typographically respond to that, usually through some kind of printed object, which is what most people end up doing. Even though people wanted us to do other things, but it's the kind of token way of behaving in this project, I suppose. And that was the great thing about having so much time just to read and to make and to be. And it's such a luxury and a really nice self-indulgent time in your life, because you're ultimately the client, because it's going in your portfolio. So my topic was about utopia and about how people try to make these their own utopias through architecture, and most of the time failing at that. So yeah, when I look back on it, it's probably actually really badly set type, but it was fun. And one of the outcomes of it, to kind of get away from the printed book object type thing, was I made a flag, which was really fun, and I wanted to hang it on a mast in college, but logistically doing something like that in an institution is a pain. So here it is on my floor. My cat Jaffa really, really liked it. So there was a lot more to what happened in college, but these are projects I look back on really happily. So I just kind of wanted to give a brief overview, because I know the Katie Lounge is kind of created by students, and it's a nice way to kind of, you know, people that are still going through that time, about the takeaway from someone seen it after. And then it was summer, the first summer after I finished college, and I was really lucky that Ace and Tate reached out to me to be their design collaborator for their first Irish store. So if you're not familiar with them, they're an eyewear brand, and they make each of their stores with a very local kind of view in mind, which is why they collaborate with local people. And so basically they put a piece of neon in every single store usually, or some kind of artwork anyway. And the store all has like a massive concept behind it that they work with a load of you know, kind of architecture people, and sorry, there's obviously a better word for that than architecture people, but it's escaping me now. And so the kind of concept for the store was, so the Irish for Dublin is Dublin, meaning Blackpool, so it was a lot to do with like deep kind of, you know, waters and the kind of literary history that Ireland has and stuff like that as well. So my point of reference for my outcome was this James Joyce quote, which is by the old swimming baths in Dunleary in Ireland. And so what I took from that was silence, low and faint and whispering. And I don't know if you've ever worked with neon before, but the lines can't close, so it actually created this kind of cool, abstract, almost there, half there kind of type. And then this is what it looks like in the store, which is quite nice. So a lot of people do like kind of imagery and stuff like that, so it was kind of nice. And a lot of the outcomes aren't typographic, so this was nice to like tie back in with my own work that it was typographic. And then they very kindly asked me to create a publication with them, and that was in collaboration with Elias Grace and District Magazine in Dublin. And we got to do this cool Riso print poster with my friends at Or Studio, who are amazing if you ever need Riso in Ireland or anywhere. So that was really nice. And we basically worked with all these local people and interviewed them, and kind of gave them a platform as a way of like introducing Ace and Tate to Dublin. Felly Speaks is an amazing spoken word artist. this is Aisling Farnell and David Wall, and David Wall is actually my old boss, which is kind of funny. And this is Joe Mackin, a restaurateur from Ireland, and there was a couple of other people in it as well, but just put a thing in. And I unfortunately wasn't there when everything launched, which was kind of weird and sad because, you know, it was the first kind of massive project that I worked on, and I didn't get to see the final kind of outcome or fruition of all that kind of, you know, it was like a 2 to 3 month kind of project, and I was very, very happy that all of my amazing friends were there, like Sarah Selleck, Jonathan Boyce, my friend Eva Cooper, and Edward Courtney, and Kaylee, who I mentioned earlier, and my, as ever, supportive, amazing family. There's Lucy, Grace, and Ruby there, who was brought in by my cousin Siobhan. So that was really nice to see all this stuff from far away. And then obviously I wasn't there because I was in München. So the same summer I applied to do an internship in Bureau Bourse in Munich. Didn't even think I'd get a reply. Found out at the end of July that I got the job, and then we had a few weeks to figure out how to move to a country where we didn't speak the language and with a cat. So that was a lot of fun. Oh, sorry, I'm just looking at the chat now. The collaboration with Ace and Tate actually came from, there's an Irish designer there called Finn. And he basically kind of led the research of who was going to be the collaborators, and I think our friend Ben is quite close with him in Amsterdam. They all live over there, and so I think it just kind of was either word of mouth, but it was so nice of them to choose someone that maybe didn't have like a massive platform, but like, you know, I do definitely pride myself on being like an Irish designer and creating like local kind of work. So that was really nice for like someone that's an outsider or bigger to kind of recognize that, which was sweet. Okay, sorry, back to München. So went to München, and so I worked on a lot of projects while I was in Bureau Bourse, but I'm just going to talk about two. Kind of the bigger ones that, you know, made an impact in my portfolio after, or, you know, stuff that I got the most out of, basically. And one of the biggest things was obviously the greatly anticipated relaunch of The Face, which was, of course, in collaboration with the newly formed in-house team at The Face, and alongside my colleagues Collier Boucher, art direction by Mirko Borsch, and of course Jacob Wyeth, who created the typefaces for the physical and digital publication based on Neville Brody's work and the original Face magazine. And he also created some amazing, completely new custom ones as well that have become a big part of the identity of how The Face exists in its physical publication. And so this was quite an interesting thing that, you know, it was their first time, it was the first time The Face was ever going to be online, because it only existed in like the 80s and stuff like that. So it was really cool, and we did loads of workshops with the team from that. They were all new hires as well, so they were all getting to know each other. We were getting to know them, and we were trying to facilitate and make it as good as possible. And they really wanted to bring a lot of kind of aspects together. So sound, photography, editorial, and as I said, it was the first time it was going to exist online, so it really needed to make an impact. So this is kind of like our news ticker, let's say, and it's kind of the way that they communicate the kind of headlines of whatever's going on. So, you know, this is how for us it stands apart. In the first, when you land, it's not a normal landing page that you would see on, like, you know, all these kind of editorial magazines exist in the same way, because there has to be a kind of certain system template that people are familiar with and like to use, like ID days and stuff like that. So we had to think of ways to, you know, keep ourselves distant but also familiar. So these are just examples of how the website works, and kind of headline over image, multiple different projects. So they really wanted, so, you know, some projects might be about the photography, and as I said, some projects might be more about the writing that went into that. So, you know, instead of just having images, when you go through the list of articles, you can also have pull out big massive type as well, which can change. And they really wanted to push for sound, like, you know, in a time where people spend, you know, a lot of time sending WhatsApp messages, like audio messages. So like sound is having like a massive moment, so they had their own custom like audio player and stuff like that as well. And just making sure there was, like, in the back end, a lot of kind of different options for the editorial team to kind of play with. So pull quotes here if people want to like, you know, highlight something, carousels, big images, and they did a lot of stuff with like having kind of like not a team, but like they were kind of people that they reached out to and they wanted to, you know, kind of create a community vibe and like get that going. So this was kind of like how do we give information about those people? And of course, mobile. If I've learned anything, it's mobile first. So I probably shouldn't have shown desktop first, but it's the world I live in. And then Kimono, which is a Belgian watch and eyewear brand, and basically they reached out to collab with Bureau Bourche to make you know, the 2019 version, or was it I think they released in 2019. The 2019 version of their core collection, which is camo, animal, tie-dye, floral, and paisley. So this is my favorite one. This is and it was the super nice thing about them was we had a lot of freedom. They literally, I think we did this like once, and they loved everything, which was amazing. So this is why I love this so much, because it was like a labor of love, and it was such a nice experience. So a part of the concept was, so this concept is camo, so it's kind of like a digital kind of texturized camo, and so from all the kind of different things, I just made up these statements that I 100% didn't think that they would go for. So camo is hidden in plain sight, and there you have the animal print, the tie-dye, the floral, and the paisley. So animal is animal instinct. Tie me up, I will die. Definitely didn't think they would go for that. I don't need your flowers, and like a moth to a flame. And whoever let me make paisley flames, I don't know if they should be employed, but it was definitely a funny thing to get to do. And I can't believe that possibly someone out there is wearing this madness. Oh, hey Tom from Cassis Kramer in the chat. And no. So basically, experiment is something that I started doing. So when I was working for clients all the time, I kind of got away from experimentation and researching, which, as I mentioned, is something I really, really loved when I was in college. So you had like an abundance of time to do that there. So I felt so separate from it, or, you know, it was hard to make, you know, it was when you're in a project, you're making something solely for that. So through this stuff, I realized that, you know, you can be making stuff that has no meaning, no purpose, and it'll come back around, basically. So I started doing this image manipulation. That is just, you know, it was just something that I wanted to do in my own time, and, you know, I posted on Instagram a few times, but never ultimately went anywhere. And Simon liked using them as his screensaver, so that was its main purpose for a while, which was kind of funny. And then Simon, of course, made Raid magazine, which is basically a magazine where he reached out to designers to create logos for imaginary video games, and it's amazing if you want to buy one. Plug for Simon there. But he very kindly asked me to use the experiments that I had made to create the end pages for the magazine. So they looked really cool because it was like crazy fluoro, salmony, pinky, spot color, and it was in contrast with the black, and it was super high glossy and shiny, and and the quality of the print as well just brought like an extra kind of layer to it, which was really, really nice. So those silly experiments went somewhere, you know. And then again, for this project, I was reached out to by an agency in Dublin who were working with 3Mobile. They basically created a song for a 3Mobile campaign, and they reached out to me to create the artwork. It was just going to be on Spotify and their kind of social media and stuff like that. So it wasn't too crazy, but it was nice. And then I took those textures and, like, you know, reduced them to this very, very stripped back kind of way. And this became kind of the base for the work that I did. And they actually went with this pattern, but not the type. That's okay. So, and then I created loads of different versions, but I just wanted to show them in that this very loose thing that I made actually was the foundation for this entire project. And I think working with textures and things that aren't as like graphic like that create like a much more, I don't know, they create a much more interesting thing, even though you're doing it all on the computer anyway. You know, there's ways to create that kind of depth and nice kind of layering. And then this is my personal favorite one. Just looks so like deep and scary and weird. I don't really like. And so that kind of research and process and stuff led me on to so basically in research I was also looking at a lot of stuff, like a lot of museums and libraries put a lot of their imagery online, like all of their archives are up online. So I don't know how I got onto this, but I ended up starting to I saved a bunch of images and, you know, like their sources and where they're from, and these became kind of experiments as well that were just silly things that I posted on Instagram at the time. And when I was living in Munich, I was like, you know, didn't have a ton of money when I lived there, so I liked looking at photos of different parts of Bavaria, which was then became, you know, silly things and like kind of form experiments. And so, sorry, so that leads me to outcome. So how all of these different things that I was creating actually kind of formed the basis of how my work would continue. And so Nisha O'Keefe is the creator and editor of Hot Potato, who kindly invited me to, at the time, just design a magazine, and that has now turned into being like design director of that magazine. And Hot Potato covers political and social issues, but in a contemporary and very digestible way. And it looks like a fashion magazine, but it's far from it. So basically, the research behind all of this came from one of Nisha's friends. Their parents ran a magazine in North Dublin in the 1980s called Strumpet. And we wanted to reference this in a way that it, you know, it covered political and social issues just like Hot Potato, but, you know, I didn't want to take, obviously, this, like, a design like this is so pure and so happy and accidental that, you know, I could never recreate it. So what elements of this can I take? So, you know, I took it, and, you know, instead of the blue, we did navy. And then the really nice thing about type from this time is because people made it on like photocopiers and stuff like that, like the type is all kind of haphazardly falling all over each other, and that tightness is like really, really nice. And that's how we got to Hot Potato. So we looked at like loads of old ads as well, like Apple ads, and just kind of awkwardly put this nice type together, which perfectly represents how Hot Potato works. And this ended up being the cover. So it's more like a newspaper, so it's a nod to kind of, you know, that's where you read about politics and stuff like that. So we were like, we're the like fashion newspaper, we're the fashion looking newspaper that talks about political things, I guess. Which is really fun because it's, you know, it's all our own, all funded by Nisha, and, you know, there's no ads, so that's a massive thing. So we create our own campaigns within the magazine, and the ads are for the magazine that you're reading. And so these amazing photos are by Sophie Gladstone, who is the amazing photo editor and all-round harmonizer, coordination extraordinaire of Hot Potato. And so this piece is like about like the death of print, which is kind of funny reading that in a newspaper. And some amazing photography. And then it's the same in the UK, I think, but in Ireland, basically, if you buy like the newspaper, there's always like a supplement in it. And the funny thing about putting a supplement in Hot Potato is that it only comes out once a year or so. It's meant to be twice a year or so, but we're trying our best. So it's quite funny to put something in the weekend supplement because it could be any weekend. So Hot Potato has over 60 contributors. So my job as design director was to kind of bring all these elements together in a harmonious, exciting, and accessible way, because ultimately we want Hot Potato to be for everyone. This is Nisha's mouth filled with ink. And it was also translated into French, and we went to go to we had a fun launch in London and also in France. So this piece is about Venezuela, France, bees. So, you know, using kind of little, it's not illustrated in any way, but like using little kind of almost typographic details in the line there to communicate that this is about bees. And then this is the campaign of In Partnership with Your Brain, which was managed by Bridie Gilbert, Elise Mado, and Nadia Doherty, and Sophie as well. And basically, they made the brief to send out to all of the kind of contributors, and these are the ads that you see within the magazine, which are kind of fun. And then got to make this ridiculous ISBN thing on the back, and we had a t-shirt. I hope Potato becomes famous, because when it does, I'm going to show everyone who you really are. And then, funnily enough, I actually live around the corner from this cafe that we had this in now, and the launch was in September, and I didn't live in London at the time, so it's kind of funny how things work out. And that's Simon living his best life in in Paris. Sorry, someone's just talking to me in the chat. I'll get back to that in a sec. And we had an amazing violinist who was a part of one of the shoots that we did. And then, so these are some of the campaign that this is how we kind of treated images on Instagram to kind of create that. And the photo with the car is by my friend Rudy D'Souza, and the photo with the shoe is by Sophie. We love the steamy toes. And then this is an amazing baby called Winnie. These photos are by a guy called Vivek, and it's quite amazing to see something that you made as a nappy. It makes me really happy. And then this is the website that was, of course, made by Simon. So I didn't want the website to have too much on it, so it's kind of a gesture to the images that were made for the campaign. And then also, you know, when like newspapers fall over each other, Simon had this amazing idea to just make that the website. So go Simon. And then this is a sneak peek at the new logo. I'm only going to show you for 2 seconds. Bye. And then we are now on to the kind of, I talked about John Leo earlier, and this is kind of the next step in his like process of what he's doing. So this is a physical store in Galway called Pleasure, which is part of a bigger kind of concept called Temporary Pleasure. And it's about ephemeral architecture, radical design, and club culture. So it's kind of, again, a further stepping stone on from the stuff that we were working with before, and it's something that he's always developing in his practice and what he does. And, you know, that's very physical, and a lot of like, it's very, you know, the academia behind club culture and stuff like that isn't often very celebrated. So he's one of the people out there doing that kind of work to kind of archive and, you know, keep that kind of alive. So it was kind of just, so the way we kind of thought about this was we actually used a typeface that you use on receipts, because we're like, you know, it's temporary pleasure, so, you know, you throw away receipts. They don't really, there's something that's crumpled up in your pocket, and you only have them for a while, and, you know, we live in a world now where you don't want physical receipts, so I thought it was kind of funny. And John is amazing at kind of marrying together what we make, and then also he just has this kind of way of thinking about materiality and stuff like that. So we were doing all this fun stuff, and he was like, hey, I have all this like plexiglass, I don't know, it's plexiglass or whatever it is, and he's like, we can make this stuff, you know, someone I know will cut this out. So, you know, we love those like emoticons, and that's kind of stuff we were putting on the kind of receipts anyway. So we were very happy to be able to put this in a big physical kind of way, which you never would really see, and to like send messages. And these are just kind of like visual explorations of world building ways of, you know, thinking about the kind of sound system and the physical ways that John wanted to explore this idea. And then that brings us on to the kind of, it's kind of like version 2, but also it's the website of the previous, and it was done a good while later, but it's interesting to see like the colour here months in previous, and I don't think we even looked at these colours, but, you know, they fed into what was happening here now. And this kind of laid the groundwork for what we had done before. For the groundwork was already laid when we started making this, and we wanted the changes to reflect that it's a different manifestation of the same project. So, you know, we looked at a lot of kind of club posters and stuff like this, and this kind of like, you know, 2000s Y2K kind of typography, which is really fun. This has mostly existed online for now. So these are some Instagram stories that we did to kind of explain the thinking behind it. So it's an ephemeral space for the post-club reality. It's like kind of a snippet of an essay. And then, as usual, Simon on the website making some magic. So, you know, getting those kind of cool tones all kind of moving in the background. There's a shop. There's also articles and kind of essays, and this is kind of the manifestation of all the writing and research that John does. It's really nice. And they're actually photos from Pilly Willy from 2016. More article there. And then through John, he very kindly recommended me to Jennifer Mehigan, who is an incredible artist in Belfast, Northern Ireland. They approached me to create an identity for a show they're putting on as a part of their PhD. So there's an intense amount of research that Jennifer has done, and I'm delighted they trusted me to create the visuals to go alongside these. It's just a work in progress, but I just wanted to show how the research that has nothing to do with graphic design developed into design, just purely from like texture, shape, and in this case, sheen. So currently it's called Pure Longing, and it's about like a collection of love letters. They can be real love letters, e-love letters, and they're kind of all about the queer community and how we express that love online. So you can see here how like those kind of references influence the type. And it felt like because there were so many nice things going on, you know, like we can have all these different assets. It doesn't have to be the same. It can be the same logo type, but like you know, what's the difference? It can be the texture. It doesn't have to be something that's the same all the time. So these are just kind of poster explorations that when the exhibition does happen, or the event, or when it goes up online, how they'll kind of exist, and you know, a collection of love letters, treating that like a text bubble kind of thing that you would see in your iMessages, but nice and sheeny and beautiful. And you'll see here that it's kind of, I literally probably made like, I think there's like 6 assets, and it's just using them all in different ways and moving them around and changing the color, but they create so many nice different little compositions, which is fun. This is Simon's personal favourite slide of the presentation. So you can see there, like, you know, when I was looking at the kind of buildings that Jennifer was really into, there's like all these weird decals on the wall and stuff like that, and it's like, how, without using a physical photo, can we make that a similar type of thing? So there's that. And then all of these projects led from stuff that I did in my spare time, and it all fed back into my actual work in some way or another. So all the silly explorations that I did aren't a waste of time, and the stuff you learn when you're researching all came back together. So another example of this process leading to outcome comes in the form of my submission to Creatives Against COVID, which I was very kindly asked to be a part of by my amazing friend Sue. Shout out Sue. Who is a designer at Richards D. So this is an initiative that came from the fallout of the pandemic, and so I'm sure everyone's aware that you know, there was a rise in abuse happening to women and children in Ireland and all over the world due to the lockdown, which is a super tough topic, but obviously this stemmed from spending more time in your home and in a frustrating and very scary situations, and I'm sure that a lot of us can agree that we're all very lucky to not be in those situations. So it was kind of the first time that I was involved in possibly making a difference, and I often think that graphic design is a waste of time, or I feel a bit useless or helpless, and this is something good that stemmed out of something really bad, and I feel like it created this kind of weird sense of community online and through this time where we all had to sit in our homes on our phones and stuff like that. So I just want to say thanks to Celine D and the entire Richards D team for orchestrating all this, and they raised an incredible amount of money for people, and it's still going. If you want to buy a poster, Creatives Against COVID, just give it a Google. So my piece is about connection to yourself, to the earth, to one another, and the background photograph is by Richard Tilbrook of McGillicuddy Reeks in the northwestern end of Cara Lake in County Kerry in Ireland. So this it was taken in 1960 and it's a part of the National Library of Ireland's collection. And this is an example of all that kind of research and archive work that I'd gone through, and saving and like wanting to reference Ireland in my work, and looking at different resources that aren't graphic design, and staying away from Pinterest and Instagram and Facebook and all that kind of stuff. And the text, Letters from the Earth, is a reference to a book by Mark Twain of the same name. So this is obviously very similarly treated to those like early experiments that I was doing when I lived in Munich. So all came back around. And I know the many fights that we're experiencing right now aren't over, and it's really easy to feel powerless at the moment. And all the racial issues that are happening all over the world, especially in the US, affect a lot of people really close to me. So alongside donating, I want to use what little skill I have to help make something for someone. So if anyone wants to get in touch with any way I can help them, please do contact me. That's the kind of work I would like to do more often. Get in touch. Yeah, thanks. I'll leave this up for a second and then I'll put my camera back on if anyone wants to ask any questions. Hello. So I'm just going to see if there's some questions. So Sinead T asked, I've just graduated in design and I've come to move back to rural Ireland and design jobs and understanding. I don't know what advice I have. I guess just try not to act cool, or like, the devil is Instagram, and it's so annoying that that's one of the big tools that we need as designers, because it's a visual platform and people create followings, but I think that kind of stuff is also toxic and can be really bad for your brain to have to keep reaching for that. So I think just make the work that you like, share it on whatever platform you think is what's right for you. Like Tumblr is a great place to do that, and it's a bit more anonymous, and it's less about your face and like the personality and who you are. And I feel like we're in this weird time where hopefully it's going to be a new platform to change that stuff. And I know like Behance and stuff exists, but I just don't agree with that either. I don't know why, sorry. I'm just trying to have a think, how would I want to do that? I think just keep trucking, because it's a weird time where it's all oversaturated with everything, and I don't feel like I'm different or better or anything than anyone else. And it's just about putting it out there, doing work that you want to do. And I think anything good that's ever come from any of my work is, as I said, from self-initiated stuff. So just try to do that as much as possible. Hope that's not a stupid answer. I'm just going to open this so I can see the chat properly. Tom, how do you balance work and personal projects and keep the steam going? I don't know. I think it's a weird thing. Like now, if I have nothing to do, I feel like really weird, or like not that no one wants to work with me, but like, I broke for so long that I think that, it's not, I don't know, it's kind of like, I'm so young. I just feel like, why wouldn't you be working, I guess? Or I feel like we're in this weird kind of rat race, and I think that we're kind of in this, as I said to Sinead there, like we're in this toxic culture of like you have to keep doing anything to stay relevant. And I seen these articles the other day coming out about like Milton Glaser saying that apparently, no shade to Milton Glaser, but apparently he used to think that women don't become rock star famous designers because they have to go off and have babies. And we're in this weird kind of industry where like if you disappear for even a year, you're not relevant unless you already have a massive name. So it's kind of a catch-22. But yeah, I think just like, mainly needing money, because we moved to London and it's so expensive to live here. That's a big drive to make work. And thankfully, like for literally years, and even now I do work for like little to no money, but sometimes people just come to you with great projects and you want to be a part of them. So I almost say yes to nearly everything, kind of regardless of money. So maybe that's why, like, you know, even though I only graduated a while ago, I have a volume of work, but only because I kind of took a hit for ages. And, you know, I'm kind of getting okay money now, but, you know, it's only, it feels like it's normal now, and I in no way feel safe. And, you know, that could all go away tomorrow or next month, and especially in this weird time that we're living in now. So it's kind of funny. Anya Lenihan, what's your main source of inspiration? Ireland, for sure. I think Ireland has such a rich culture, and it really takes you going to live in different. Like, I love living in different places, but it's nice to live in a different place and look at Ireland with rose tinted glasses, because I feel like a lot of young people that live there feel like they're stuck, or there's no options, or like culture isn't valued. Like, it's weird that so many people visit Ireland because they're like, oh, the the literary history, the cool kind of nonchalant artists and stuff like that. But currently in Ireland, like, we don't have a lot of funding. The rents are really high from places like Facebook, Google, all these massive tech companies moving in. So people that are from there are pushed out, and like, you know, even when me and Simon thinking about the future, we're like, where could you live? And it's like, you have to live outside Dublin because it's way too expensive to get somewhere. So it's not like the safe haven that it used to be. But now that I live here, I'm like, you know, my eyes are shamrocks and my blood runs with green. So I look at that as a lot of things, like as you've seen in the kind of stuff for creatives against COVID. I love looking at like the National Library of Ireland and history and stuff like going on there. And I don't know if anyone's seen earlier on Katie Lounge's Instagram, but I shared this book, Irish Type and Design by Dermot McGuinn. It's a really great typographic book, and I also shared like lunch poems by Frank O'Hara, and kind of like, yeah, poetry is like a big thing as well, like looking at that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's it. We got a lot of political ethical issues discussion society today. What are your approaches for graphic designers and students to take part, and how do you deal with issues? Yeah, it's weird. It's like, I don't know, when we were doing creatives against COVID, like there was definitely people saying like, you're putting yourself at the center of an issue that's not about you, or you're putting, or like, you know, just donate money instead of instead, like, why does there have to be a poster that you buy? But sometimes, like, I don't know, why not make the poster? It definitely didn't harm anybody, I don't think, in those kind of ways. And it's hard to, it's, use the tools that you have, I suppose, is the only logical way to do it. But I've been recently battling and conflicted at myself, and I'm like, you know, should I go volunteer places instead of, you know, I spend time doing freelance or whatever, and I'm like, maybe I shouldn't be doing that because that just makes money for me. So, but then I can donate a portion of that money to people, which is obviously really helpful. But it's super hard. But I've only been at KK since the end of January, so I was in the studio for 6 weeks, and then all of this happened. So I've been working at home since then. But it's a quite, our London office is quite small, so it's nice. And I know that they have a history of, you know, getting involved in like the climate change stuff, and it's kind of a big thing in the office that we've tried to work, or at least assist sustainable brands and stuff like that, on a global platform, to so ways that we can try and you know, communicate that kind of, you know, the studio tells like branding and storytelling and stuff like that. But we try to look for people that are morally good, I suppose, is the way to do that. But we're recently now having lots of conversations about how we can deal with these issues on a smaller scale within the studio and make them better as well. So very grateful to work in a place where, you know, that conversation isn't swept under the rug. And then my dad, some of your work across political issues, how do you deal with criticism? I don't think I've gotten any criticism, or else no one said it to my face anyway. But I would probably just, you know, anything that you put online is open to criticism, so kind of have to be up for it. And I think something that was really good about IDT is that we We had amazing but tough tutors, so we learned to defend our work very well. I think everyone that I went to college with will vouch for that. So I feel like I'd be okay if someone I'd probably be upset privately if someone criticised it, but not online. Sinead T, when you're creating work, what is your process like and how do you find inspiration? How do I find inspiration? I don't know. I try to look at different things. Like as I said earlier, don't look at Instagram, don't look at Pinterest, don't look at any kind of visual thing, and look at books, look at stuff that's here, draw, sketch, which is really cliche, but it's like, I don't know. I feel like there's so many trends, and like I'm sure my work falls into some of them for sure. I'm by no means a pioneer, but really far from it. And I've definitely tried to imitate work before, which is why I stay away from those things now, because especially when you're in college, like you seen in photos earlier, like you surround yourself with references, and there you have to learn visually how to do that kind of stuff, but you need to learn how to separate yourself from what you're looking at. So, as much as possible, look at something that's not on a computer, maybe. And then, I don't know if I missed anyone's questions. Or if anyone has any more questions. If not, I probably waffled on and talked too fast for the entire thing. Okay. Am I getting drunk later? Probably. I'll definitely have a drink after this. But I might leave it there if no one has any more questions. You let me know. Okay. Thanks so much, guys.